Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Education USA Thursday lectures. Welcome. I hope you're excited about the approaching holiday season, and I hope you like this winter weather. And thank you for joining Education USA. My name is Katerina Alexandruk. I'm the outreach coordinator for the network in Ukraine. I just want to remind you that we are a global network of consulting centers, and we provide all of information about higher education, about opportunities to receive academic experience in the United States, and our services are for free, so please feel free to contact us, and we will be happy to help you to achieve your dream and go to the United States to receive your dream diploma. And I'm very pleased to welcome today with us Christopher Johnson. Christopher is the director of the International Undergraduate Recruitment at Arizona State University. Welcome, Christopher. And I know that today I think we have so many of you are working on your applications, on the application packages, getting ready to apply to a university. So maybe you're just thinking on starting your work on application packages to apply next year. And at that season, basically in December, we receive a lot of questions about the documents, about the requirements, especially about the letters of recommendation. And we are very grateful to Christopher, who will share the information from other sides, from the team of the basically admission commission, probably some insights about the applications and specifically about the recommendation letters that we need to request from others and how to do that, what needs to be there. Should they be translated or not? So all these questions. Christopher, before you start with the presentation, I just want to remind everybody, feel free to use the chat box and leave your questions, and we will open the Q&A session at the end of the presentation.
All right. Am I coming through okay? Let's just do a quick sound check.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you. My name is Christopher Johnson, as it says on there, but please call me Chris. Only my mother and my wife call me Christopher, and only when I'm in a lot of trouble. I try to speak at a good even pace, but if I speak too quickly or you miss a point that I make, please use the chat, and I'm happy to come back to a point, explain it a little bit further. I understand how it is to listen to a presentation in a second, third, fourth language. So anyway, delighted that you're here. Can we go ahead and try to get the screen sharing going? It looks like it's still turned off for me. So while we're waiting for that, I'll just say a few words about myself. I am, as the slide said, I'm Director of International Undergraduate Recruitment. I have worked at a number of U.S. universities, public, private, large research institutions like Arizona State, and I've also worked at small private institutions. So I have a wide variety of experiences that I can share with you. I have worked on the East Coast of the United States. I am in the Southwest. I have worked in the middle part of the country. I've also worked in the Southeast. So I have perhaps a unique perspective on how Let's see. Okay. All right. So we're still working out some of the tech things. So anyway, I have a wide variety of experiences, and I'm so excited to share those with you. I've worked with Education USA in different capacities around the world for more than 25 years, going back quite a ways. So I appreciate their mission, and I'll stress for all the students and families who may be on this call today that Education USA is your top resource for understanding U.S. degrees, understanding the U.S. application process, and all those kinds of questions in a unbiased, nonprofit kind of fashion. So take advantage of them because they're there for you. So I'm going to just sort of start to jump into the application part, and sorry, let me just answer this chat real quick.
That's fine. We're just trying to figure out the technical details of the...
All right.
Well, meanwhile, I think the audience can think about the questions they might be having, or probably something that they are waiting to hear today, or just to anticipate with like the information you will provide with their questions.
Yes, absolutely. Let me just, sorry. Okay, let me get that going. Okay. And then I'll move that, and okay. All right, let me try one other thing. I'm sorry, everyone. My apologies for this. I'm a little bit rusty with some of this.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can't. It will not let me share it, unfortunately.
Chris, would you send it to me? I can share it for you.
Yeah, actually, that would probably be better. It's a big file, so hopefully it won't blow up the system. Bear with me just a moment. There we go. Okay, I just sent it, Katerina. So, all right. So let me get to the topic at hand, which is letters of recommendation, and we'll get the slides up, hopefully going in a minute. But so letters of recommendation are something that's a little different about the U.S. higher education system. And the reason we ask for letters of recommendation is because, well, two reasons. First, every university is different in the U.S. So every question that you ask, the answer has to start with "it depends." But one of the main reasons is that many universities in the U.S. practice what is called holistic admissions. In other words, we're looking at the whole person. So we're not only looking at your grades, that's the most important thing, but we're also interested in what have you done outside the classroom? What are the things you are passionate about? Ultimately, we're interested in how you are going to fit into our academic community. How are you going to fit as a student, as a member of our family? In some cases, at smaller institutions, there really is that family kind of feel. Letters of recommendation are an important way for people who know you to tell us more about you, so we can get a more rounded or a whole picture of who you are and what you're passionate about, what you're hoping to do, what are your dreams, what are your aspirations. So the letter of recommendation, again, it's going to depend on the institution, right? Some institutions will ask for one letter. Some institutions will ask for 2. For graduate students, sometimes that can be 3 or even 4. So it's going to depend on the type of institution, but I'm going to focus primarily on undergraduates and bachelor's applications. But certainly when we get to the Q&A, happy to talk about graduate or any other kinds of aspects. The most important one, if it's only one letter, is from the school counselor. Now, your school may not have a school counselor, and we know that. Let's jump to slide. Sorry. Slide 10, please. All right. Okay, great. Hooray! We're in business. Okay, so let me just say a little bit more about who's writing and why they're writing. So the school counselor is the most important letter. In the U.S. and at international schools, the school counselor is someone who knows the students as people, as individuals. They are not a teacher, typically, but they may be involved with career guidance. They may be involved with personal and emotional counseling. But there's someone who can bring the perspective of the teacher, perspective of someone who's an adult who knows this student well, and talks about you as a unique person who helps tell your story. Because ultimately, the application is your story, your academic story, your life story, and so forth. Now, your school may not have a school counselor. So who writes that letter for you? Typically in schools that do not have a school counselor, the letter is often written by the head teacher, sometimes by the principal or the headmaster, sometimes by the director of academics. It can be a classroom teacher. If that's the person who knows you best, if that's the person who feels most comfortable, because I know that sometimes in many schools, particularly if your school is not an English medium school, teachers and principals may not be comfortable writing in English. So it also needs to be someone who's comfortable writing in English. So you know who that person is going to be. We're going to ask for counselor, but we understand in the international space that that kind of a position may not exist at your institution. If the institution asks for a second letter or a third, one of those letters could be from a teacher, a classroom teacher, in addition to the school counselor, and it can also be from a supervisor. So if you have a job and you're working part-time, and that person has observed you as a worker and can speak to your work ethic, how you do your work. Do you come on time? Do you work hard? Are you friendly? Are you capable? Are you willing to ask questions? All those kinds of things are important for us as universities to have a sense of. The last item on this slide is titled matches. And I've used the example a couple times now of telling a story, telling your story. The letter of recommendation ideally matches the story that you're telling in your statement of purpose or personal essays. Because ultimately, we don't get to meet you in person in many cases. Much of the time for international applicants, the first time we're meeting you, I put in quotations, is when we are reading your application. So part of what you're trying to do in that application is to tell your story and tell it the way you want it to be told. So the letters of recommendation should match, hopefully, should echo, should help tell the same kind of story. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. So what should be in the letters? Oftentimes at international schools, the people who are writing letters are not familiar with writing this kind of a letter. All right. So you need to give them some guidance. Okay. So what we're looking for in the letter is an introduction, how they know you. I've been Sergey's teacher for 2 years. I've been Sergey's principal for 3 years. However they know you, right? Want to know why they're recommending you. Generally, we don't like the letter to say, I'm writing this letter of recommendation because the student asked me to write it. That's not very convincing to us. In fact, that's a concern for us, or what we would call a red flag. If the person who's writing the letter can't give some good reasons why they are writing for you, you may want to consider getting someone else to write a letter for you. All right. So, they may say, great student, very enthusiastic, very friendly, very active, top student in my class, things like that. We want to hear something about you that's not just sort of the standard, this is a great student, they were in the top 10% of my class and in the students I've taught this year. Well, why? What is it about you that's special, that's different? So, in your literature class, maybe you tackled a unique and interesting subject for a major paper, and you did a really good job of linking the literature of Ukraine with modern contemporary problems in the region, or things like that. And then the closing statement is just a restatement. I recommend this student because they're awesome, why they're awesome, and that they would be a great addition to our university. That's what we're looking for. 1 page is the maximum. We don't want to ask folks to write longer than that. And as we're reading hundreds and thousands of these, 1 page is about the sweet spot of what a letter should look like. So, Katrina, should we pause there and see if there's any questions in the chat? And then I can move on to the personal statement and essays, because I like to talk about both things because they're related together.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm not sure.
I can. Yep.
Yep. Well, I see no more questions so far, but I have questions that my students ask me, usually ask me. First of all, let me probably just share my screen again. First of all, about the language. This is kind of a weak probably spot in Ukraine, because a lot of the teachers and professors in universities that our students are asking to write recommendation letters, they don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no basic, let's say, knowledge of English. And they only can read the recommendation letters in Ukrainian. Right. And the students basically ask, what should we do? Do we translate them? Do we send them in Ukrainian in the universities? I do understand that each university probably has its own rules and requirements, but do you have an experience? Probably, I think it's not only about Ukraine. Many international students apply to American universities, so it might be any kind of a different language.
Yes.
So what would be the recommendations in that case?
Yeah. So if it's not possible to get letters of recommendation in English, what we would ask for is to have the letter in the Ukrainian with an English translation. However, we do ask that the translation not be done by the student. We ask that the translation be done by somebody who's qualified to do translations. And it doesn't have to be a formal translation service with stamps and seals and all of that. It could be just as simple as someone who is a professor of English at a university, or someone who is the formal English teacher at the high school. the key is that it's not by the student, it's not by the parent, it's by somebody who is outside of the family relationship, or a personal friend. Now, if the English teacher happens to be a personal friend, well, we don't really have any way to know that. But it needs to be somebody who is qualified to do translations. And that, we don't, some institutions will require formal official translations, but most of the time we will accept it if it's done by the English teacher or someone who has an ESL certification, things like that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And what about the technical part? I know that there are different ways of submitting those recommendation letters. They need to be in Word document, PDF, written by hand,
right?
Through the specific form. Do the universities probably send a request to specific people that if I ask a recommendation letter, probably I give you the names and you will, how usually, what's your university's procedure?
Right. Well, so it's funny that you asked that. Arizona State actually doesn't require letters of recommendation for undergraduates, but I've worked with letters of recommendation for 25 years. So I can say from the vantage point of having worked at 9 different institutions, kind of what the range is. So it's going to depend on what application you use, right? With the Common App, you upload the applications directly into the Common App, and then we pull them down into our system. If you apply directly into the institution, you'll want to read the directions very carefully. So some institutions will let you upload multiple attachments, letters of recommendation, certificates of merit, things like that. Other institutions will only let you upload one file. So you have to put everything together in one document and then upload it at one time. Some institutions require official versions of everything. Some institutions will take unofficial and then will ask for official if they have questions. So this really comes back to what I sort of skipped over in the interest of time, but this doing your research and understanding what each institution is asking for and following their procedures. This is where EducationUSA is so helpful, because one of the great things about the US system is that we have over 4,000 colleges and universities. One of the bad things about the US higher education system is that we have over 4,000 colleges and universities who do things just a little bit differently. And it's incredibly frustrating for students around the world. I understand. We understand. But that's the way it is. And so that's where your research and your homework and working with trusted resources like EducationUSA are so important. Katrina, if it's all right with you, I'd like to go on and just talk a little bit about the statements of purpose, personal essays for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we will be back. We'll be back with the questions after that.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, yeah. No, we'll leave lots of time for questions. I promise. So the reason I like to talk about the personal statement or the essay, or again, it depends. Every institution calls it something different, is because it's part of what I talked about earlier of telling a story. It's telling your story. So again, it's going to depend. So some institutions have very specific essay questions that they want you to respond to. Other institutions will accept the standard Common App questions. Other institutions will just say, send us 500 words. You can write about anything you want. Couple of tips about that, first of all, and then I'll get into the meat of this. If the topic is wide open, all right, you do not want to write about your father, your mother, your grandfather, your grandmother, your brother, your sister, unless, and this is the key, unless there is something incredibly important about your relationship with them that reflects on you, right? So to write an essay, it says, well, my dad is my strongest influence in my life because he works so hard to support his family and he's a great dad, so forth and so on. That's a great story, but it's not your story. We want to know your story. So if that reflects on you in some fashion, then that's great to tell. But otherwise, as a general rule, for your essays, statements of purpose, things like that, steer clear of writing about family members. Okay. So the statement of purpose, and again, this is going to depend a little bit whether you're graduate or undergraduate. If you're graduate, it's going to be much more focused on your professional goals. You know, what is your career path? What have you been doing to get to that career destination? For undergraduates, right, many of you are just finishing secondary school or high school. You're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. You're just getting started with your life. But you have goals. You have dreams. We want to know about those goals and those dreams. Sometimes an essay prompt or a topic will be, tell us about something that impacted you profoundly, that really heavily influenced you. So that would be a case you might want to write about a job that you had, a service opportunity that you had, something that you're really passionate about and have achieved a level of expertise and strength. I once had an application from a student who wrote their essay about being a professional. It's a type of folk dancing that's practiced in the United States called clogging. Pretty obscure, but this individual had become professionally ranked in this art form sport, and why they were passionate about it and how they learned about it and the places they've gone around the world to practice their art form. That's a great story. Okay. But even if you're not a world champion in something, you all have passions. You all have dreams. We want to know about those because ultimately, as the middle bullet says, who are you? We are often only meeting you for the very first time in your application. The personal statement or the essays that you're writing is really the one chance you have, other than your academics and other than the letters of recommendation and everything else. But it's the main chance you have to tell us who you are and why you would be a good fit for our institution, why we would be lucky to have you. Now, I don't want to encourage you to brag, is the word in English, to promote yourself if you're don't necessarily have these strong level of accomplishments. We understand, particularly for undergraduates, you're just getting started in life. All right. So we're not looking for all of you to be Olympiad medal winners and world champion athletes and on and on and on. We're much more interested in what makes you you. And then the last bullet is convincing your, telling that story to the admissions committee so that we will choose you. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, that's great. So what should be included? Just to go over the introduction, who are you, background about you, what you're planning to do. Now, some of this is more grad focused. Certainly with a graduate application, you normally do include the CV or the resume, we often call it in the United States. The grad application, you're much more career focused. You're planning a job and so forth. For undergraduates, why do you want to study economics or medicine or law or engineering? What is it about that gets you excited? How do you want to, if you want to, change the world? What is the thing that you want to invent that's going to solve the problems of the world? All right. Try to link it to your essay to what you're hoping to study. Okay. So again, I've said a couple of times, and I'll come back to this, it's about telling a common story. So if you want to become an engineer, an aerospace engineer, try to weave into the essay what it is about aerospace that makes you excited, and what is it that you'd love to do in your dream world in aerospace one day. Building new propulsion systems that are going to transport us around the galaxies, or whatever it is. It's your story. They're your dreams, your goals. Okay? All right. And then put in a mention about how this experience is going to help you achieve the goals that you set for yourself. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So I just want to say a quick thing, and then I'm going to turn it back to questions for a minute about communicating or over communicating with colleges and universities. Next slide, please. All right. So when you write to a college or a university, first of all, this is a professional communication. It's not a quick chat between friends. It's not a informal message to a family member. This is a professional kind of communication. The better the quality of the communication, the better the quality of the response you're going to get. Keep in mind, as admissions people, we receive dozens, hundreds of email messages a day. We have to prioritize. We cannot answer every single one. You want to make sure that yours catches our attention so that we respond to you. All right? Please do your research. Do not write and ask me or ask universities, "Dear admissions officer, do you offer scholarships?" That information is all on our webpage. If you're asking me that in an email, that says to me that you are not a serious student and you have not done your homework. But if you write me an email that says, "I'm interested in your XYZ scholarship for students in marine biology because I'm passionate about marine biology," and remember what I said about telling the story? You've talked about marine biology in your essay. The person or persons who are writing the recommendation have talked about why you're passionate about marine biology. So see how it all comes together to tell your story? But do your research, okay? Appropriate language, complete sentence, check your spelling, grammar, concise, honest, direct, but do not demand, all right? We don't respond well when someone says, "Please write me back right away." All right. As I said, we get dozens and hundreds of messages a day. We simply do not have the time to write back to each and every message, particularly if the message is not well composed or it doesn't speak to us as someone who is a serious applicant. All right. And then be clear about what you're asking for in the response. Are you asking for us to write you back? Are you just telling us information that you'd like us to include in your file? All right. What is it that you want for us? Be sure to check your spam and your junk mail. All right. We have many times our communications go into those black holes. So be watching those. Okay. All right. Let's see. I just want to make sure. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide, and then I'll finish this slide, and then we'll go back to questions. We love questions. We love good questions. We love good questions the first time, second time. We get a little tired of them at the third time and beyond. If you're asking us 3 or more times questions that either are on our website or that we have already answered, the chances of you getting a response go down dramatically. All right? We're not being rude. It's just the reality that we have many students that we want to assist. And if we feel like we have really given you what we can give you, we're not going to be able to necessarily invest that time. Do your homework. Again, Read the information on our website. If something on our website isn't clear, then ask, okay, on this website, include the web link, I saw this information about whatever is the thing you're interested in, and I didn't understand how something works. Okay, that's a great question. Happy to respond to that kind of question. That shows us you're serious, you've done your homework, you're asking good questions. We want to talk to you. We want to engage with you. All right. If you send a form letter, we know form letters. We see them all the time. We send them all the time. All right. That tells us that you haven't done your homework, that you're not a serious student. You may or may not get a response. So make it personal to our institution. All right. Show us that you're doing the homework. All right. Don't send your resume. Don't send copies of your transcripts. Don't send anything unless we ask for it. All right. It's just one more thing that gets in the way of us helping you, because every time you send us something, we've got to look at it. That takes us, the time we spend looking at things that we didn't ask for is time we don't have to write back to students. The next to last bullet is a cultural thing. In the US, we're socialized from the earliest age that anytime someone does something for us, we say thank you. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago about the nature of thank you in different cultures, and how other cultures don't use that terminology. But in our culture, we do. So always close an email and say, thank you for your time. Thank you for writing me back. I appreciate you giving me this information. And the last one is, people are busy. It may take time to get back to you, right? Especially at this time of year, we're in peak time with our applications for fall, for spring, early applications, early decision, and on and on and on. If you don't hear from us after a week or so, and I mean 7 days, then feel free to send one reminder, not 3, 4, 7, but one reminder, and say, I had written you last week. I know it's probably a busy time for you, but I had this question. All right. A reminder after a week or so, perfectly appropriate. Do not send 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 emails. All right. Especially if you're a graduate student and you're reaching out to faculty. They just don't have the time to answer. And every time you send a new message, they have to turn away from what they're doing to see the message they just got, which just slows down the response you're going to get, or makes them think, okay, this isn't somebody who's serious. I'm just not going to bother. All right. And for graduate students, that's especially a problem. All right. I want to pause here, and why don't we, can we go to slide 17, put slide 17 up on the screen while we take questions? There we go.
This one?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much especially for the emails, hints. I think it is very useful information. All right. Since we're back to the questions, the next question was about the ideal size of recommendation letter, and I believe we've spoke about it. So if you can remind
Absolutely.
the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know people come and go, so happy to address that. Yeah, the ideal recommendation letter for an undergraduate should not be more than 1 page. For a graduate student, it can be up to 2 pages, but only if it includes specific examples of research or creative activities. In other words, a 2-page letter is not necessary for a graduate student if all the letter is saying, I had this student in my class, they performed well, they're passionate about the topic, and they'll be a great addition to your university. That's a 1-page letter. It doesn't need 2 pages. But if the letter includes information about, well, this student worked in my lab where we are working on reverse transcription. I'm a social scientist, so I'm not even going to try to use scientific terms and embarrass myself. If there's that kind of language in the letter, that's appropriate. But otherwise, a one-page letter is perfectly adequate. But certainly for undergraduate recommendation letters, meaning bachelor's program, one page is all you need.
Thank you. Another question is for the graduate applications. And Dmitro is asking, I have graduated from university almost 10 years ago. I need 3 letters of recommendation according to the S university. From whom could I request these letters as a recommendation?
Right. Yeah, that's a challenge we run into all the time. Here's what we hope for. We hope that you can get 1 or 2 academic letters. So someone who had you as a student in their classroom. All right, because those letters from faculty member to faculty member are really powerful. If you can get 1 academic letter, the other 2 letters can be from supervisors, people who have worked with you, people who have seen you perform in your professional role. They could be your current supervisor and a previous supervisor. But in a perfect world, we would get at least 1 and hopefully 2 academic letters and one professional letter. Now, I just applied to do a new graduate program myself. I finished my master's studies a while ago. I'll put it that way. None of the people who I took classes from are still teaching. So what I was able to do was get a couple of professional references, but I also got someone who was an academic, who was a professor, who I had worked with in a professional capacity to write the letter for me. So at least there was at least 1 letter from someone who is an academic speaking that academic language from faculty to faculty. So I hope that helps, but that's what I would recommend if you were writing to me and saying you were running into this difficulty.
Well, to my understanding, why it's so essential for the let's say future or academic staff to hear from another faculty member because they need to know what kind of students I am, right? Is it correct? Because they need to know, was I like on time or just fulfilling my assignments on time, and how I did behave during the classes. So that's why I believe it's essential. Is it correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that's important to understand why many universities insist on specifically the letters of recommendations from professors and teachers. Thank you. So next question is about the personal statements, actually. Katerina is asking, what are the main red and green flags, red and green flags in personal statements?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So as I was talking about personal statements earlier, especially for the undergrads, you don't want to write about an immediate family member unless there's something about that family member that tells us about you. It's great that your brother is, a professional actor, or it's great that your grandparent was the president of the country. That tells us about them. That doesn't tell us about you. We're interested in you. So that's a big red flag. Don't make claims that we can easily find out are not true with a quick Google search. Okay? We know how to use Google just as well as you do. So, if you say to us, you were an Intel Science Prize winner, it's a good chance we're going to look that up. And if we don't see your name, that right there, that breaking of trust is probably going to get you knocked out. So be honest. Make sure it's about you. Green flags. Make us laugh. If you can make us laugh, I promise you're going to get a lot more attention. But be careful. Humor is a tricky thing. Humor does not always translate well. make sure when you're writing your essays and your statement of purpose, make sure that a native speaker helps you look them over. Because humor is, they talk about the fact that when you're learning a language, humor is the sort of highest level of mastery of a language because it's so rooted in culture and slang and idiom. So humor is a great thing to include if you can do it carefully. Other things, tell us a story about how you overcame adversity. We love stories where students faced a challenge and overcame it and moved on. Again, be careful, okay? Just because you had mononucleosis and had to miss a month of school, we feel bad. That's a miserable thing to have. That doesn't necessarily tell us so much about your perseverance. If you're a swimmer and you have been getting up at 4:30 a.m. to go to swim practice at 5:30 a.m. since you were 8 years old, that's something that's pretty impressive. That shows a level of discipline and commitment that's going to help you do well at our universities and colleges. So those would be a few of the things that I would say as sort of green flags and red flags.
Thank you. And the next question is probably following. Would it be appropriate if I start my personal statement with a quote?
Yeah. It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, but be careful. If you use a quote, first of all, make sure that you, what we call attribute it. So if you're including a quote by a famous writer, mention the fact that it's from this famous writer and the book that it's from or where it came from. Again, we use Google too. Many of us have advanced degrees and doctoral degrees and things like that. In our academic culture, giving credit for someone else's words is the cornerstone of academics. So if you use a quote, make sure you give credit to it. The other caution I would say about a quote is you don't have a lot of space. Typically, you have about 500 words. And that quote takes away from your words and your opportunity to tell your story. So if the quote helps tell your story in some powerful way, definitely consider including it. But on balance, the best essays or statements of purpose do not include quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you. About the recommendation letters, back to recommendation letters. How vital is it to send, I believe, a recommendation letters from emails from university domain? Because in Ukraine, most of professors use personal emails instead of official ones, to which they just don't remember their passwords.
Right.
This is an issue.
Right.
Or they
Absolutely.
might not be even a domain. Many official schools they don't have their own domain. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And so what we say for those kinds of things is if they're sending it from a personal email, if they can upload an attachment, a Word document, a PDF, whatever, that has the what we call letterhead, the logo of the school and the address of the school, that we can see that they're an official person representing the school, that having it come from a personal email is perfectly fine. Again, we're probably going to Google these people, right? If we have any questions, if there's anything that doesn't feel quite right, we're going to probably look them up, and we need to be able to, make sure this is a real university, make sure that this is a real person. So, but yeah, that's perfectly fine as long as it's on letterhead or something that shows that this person is a professor of this institution. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Good evening, and this is a question from the audience. I provide private teaching classes. Can I request a letter of recommendation from the family where I teach?
I'm assuming this is for a graduate applicant, and I would say as a general rule, probably not. unless you literally have no other options, this would be my last resort. And the reason for that is, while they're paying you to provide a service, they're not really a supervisor in the sense of where you go to an office and you do a job and somebody is reflecting on your performance as a worker, and your ability to engage with your coworkers and your ability to show up on time and things like that. So I would say it would be my last choice to include as a letter. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, it was so far it was the last question we had,
Okay.
and we're almost up to 1 hour. Thank you very much for the great presentation, and
Thank you.
I think the
Do
audience
we?
for the questions. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, before we sign off, do I have 2 minutes? I have a quick video
Absolutely.
about ASU I'd love to show.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if we go to slide 19,
This is the one.
yeah, if we,
Well, I
hopefully
mean,
this will,
I'm not sure if I can, but
it's an embed, oh, no, yep, that's the one. If you click in the middle of it, it's an embedded YouTube link.
I'm not sure that
It's not coming through. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well,
So
no worries. I can get that out later. If we could go to slide 21, and I'll just say a couple of quick words about the university. Let's see, is that the one I want? Yeah, that'll work fine. So Arizona State is the largest public university in the U.S. We have 7 campuses around the United States, and some of them have 70,000 students. Some of them only have 2,000 students. So we have a lot of different experiences. We offer over 400 degree options at the bachelor's, master's, doctoral levels. We're ranked number 1 for innovation. We're ranked number 1 for sustainability. We're ranked number 1 for greenest campus. And in Open Doors that just came out 2 weeks ago, we're the number 1 public university for hosting international students. So we have over 11,000 international students attending ASU from 152 countries, including 20 students from Ukraine. So there are plenty of Ukrainian students, both undergraduate and graduate, with us. And you see some of our general rankings here. Could we drop all the way down to slide number, so folks have the information available to them, slide number 55?
wow. Let me, because I don't see the numbers of the slides. You can
Oh, back 1, back 2. There you go. Perfect. So if you want to grab, it's kind of a small font, but the first part are undergraduate students. So if you want information about Arizona State and you're interested in bachelor programs, you can go to visit.asu.edu, or you can email us at asuinternational@asu.edu. If you're a graduate student, you can also get to graduate programs. We do a wide variety of webinars 5 days a week. And you can also access those from visit.asu.edu. If you have specific graduate questions, the best email address is gograd@asu.edu. I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. There's lots more I could tell you, but thank you for your patience with some of my technical difficulties, and thank you for joining in. And mostly, and of greatest importance, thank you to Education USA for making this opportunity available for you. They are your top resource, and they are there to help you, and you should be taking advantage of them. So I'll stop here. I'm available for more questions. If there are more questions, you have our contacts if you want to follow up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, you can hear me. It was so great to have you, and thank you for agreeing. I remember we have one of our great friends now being on the research program at your university. So we know a bit more about Arizona State University right now. And thank you for agreeing to be a part of this webinar. I see it only thank you from the audience. So I believe this is all with the questions, but I'm sure we will be giving your contacts, or we will have our students contact you on university with questions. And I'm sure you will have more Ukrainians probably on campuses in the future. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night, and see you next Thursday.